Hello. You're all here for the GitHub Actions talk? Wow. That is interesante. Hi, everyone. I am Kedasha, and I work as a developer advocate at GitHub, and this is a very one-on-one type talk, intro to actions, how to use it, different actions in the wild. There will be some demos, hopefully no breaking demos. It all worked well yesterday and last week. And hopefully you learned something new. So how many of you are actually familiar with GitHub Actions? Most of you. So you may be able to teach me something. But hopefully for those of you who are not aware of GitHub Actions and their possibilities and automation stuff, hopefully you can learn something today. So let's get into it, right? So like I said, I'm Kedasha. I worked as a software engineer for about 3 years in the banking sector. And then I was just like, this is cool, but I want to be around people, talk to people, teach people, do more community work. So I came on the developer relations side. So now I'm at GitHub. I've been here for about a year and I absolutely love it. I'm having a blast. It's exhausting, but it definitely utilizes a lot of my skills a lot better. I create technical content online, specifically on Instagram of all places. Yes, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, sometimes. I write blogs, I go to conferences, all that jazz. I'm your girl, and I'm extremely addicted to TikTok. It's just so funny. I can get sucked in for like 3 hours. Recently I bought a little timer thingy to just set a timer. And I try to, time my social media game. So let's keep going. So most of you are already, not most, but a majority of you are familiar with GitHub Actions. And so GitHub Actions is essentially a way for you to automate a lot of your processes on your repository, right? So if you can trigger an event from your repository, then you can automate that event or whatever follows that event with GitHub Actions. So today, I'm hoping to teach you how to get started with Actions, show you how developers are using Actions in the wild, and also tell you about some upcoming features with GitHub Actions. And if we have time, hopefully we can send a text message with GitHub Actions. Fun fact, you can also order a pizza with GitHub Actions. There's an action called I believe it's called Domino's Action. Not recommended to use it, but you can certainly order a pizza with Actions, and that's kind of the fun stuff you can do with it. So firstly, what are Actions, right? So it's an all-in-one CI/CD tool that automates your build, test, deploy, and pipelines right from your code, right? So right where your code lives, right where your repository lives, you can automate a lot of tasks. For example, the other day, I really wanted to, so we have a stream called Open Source Friday. I don't know if you know it. It's a Twitch stream weekly where we talk to open source maintainers about their projects and all that jazz. It is a very, very manual process to invite people, send out the calendar invites, send out the messages, get them scheduled. Then internally, we have to create all these assets and do all these things. When I got the project, I was like, wow, this is actually taking a lot of time from me. How can I automate this? So I spent some time about 2 weeks ago. I created a repository and I said, okay, I'm going to instead send the invite to people, send a link to people, and then I'm going to say open an issue here. And then from that issue, I have Actions automating a lot of the repetitive tasks like, hey, remember to do this. Hey, the stream is in this day. Hey, here is the streaming guide, and just stuff like that. Those little messages that I had to send or that we had to send to, let's say, 50 plus people, significantly reduced because I put a lot of the front work on the maintainers, right? So that's the sort of stuff you can do with Actions. It's not just for CI/CD tooling. It's also for other things that you want to do in your repositories. They're useful because you can automate repeated tasks, like I just demonstrated right there in that example. They're flexible, they're scalable, they're powerful without compromising your stability or performance. Now, to write an Actions, you will use it. It's YAML based. So if you can create a YAML file or, ask an AI to help you learn how to create a YAML file, that is something that you can definitely get into. So the main features of Actions is one of the most important ones that I like is that it works with any language. So regardless of the language that you use, you can build an action based on that language, and then GitHub Actions will run it for you. It is event driven. So an event is something like pushing code to a repository, opening a pull request, commenting on an issue, opening an issue. Those are all events. Adding a label, that's an event. And so those are all triggerable and can be triggered to run a workflow or an action. We have GitHub hosted runners. You can also self-host. We have a built-in secret stores. You can run actions parallel and conditionally. Concurrently, there's a marketplace of over 20,000 actions that you have access to use within your workflow. So if there's something that you want to do, for example, one thing that we do on our team is we had a lot of stale issues. And so there's actually an action that will go into your repository, and based on X days, if it's beyond X days that no one has commented on the issue, it will alert the team and say, hey, are you still working on this? And if not, I'm going to delete it in X time. If X time has passed, the issue is going to go in and say, I'm closing this, and it's closed. That helped us dramatically to reduce the amount of issue burden that we had on our team, and just helped us to move forward because we weren't gonna go to those issues anyway. So that's kind of what I mean by the marketplace. So we got that GitHub Actions from the marketplace actually to automatically close those issues. I like to say automatically, not automatically. So if I say that instead of automatically, forgive me. We also have a lot of reusable workflows. There are live logs and visualizations. And so when it comes to hosted runners, so hosted runners essentially mean that you can execute workflow tasks on GitHub virtual machines running on Ubuntu, Windows, or macOS without needing to set up and maintain your own infrastructure. Now, if you want to set up and maintain your own infrastructure, you can also self-host your runners. So you can use your own machine and infrastructure to run workflows for enhanced control and security compliance. We have environment variables, and we also have secrets. So you can store sensitive data, which is encrypted, and you can also store not so sensitive data where you can actually see the text value. And yeah. So what do you need to know to use GitHub Actions? They're housed in your repository. So all you would need is a .github/workflows, a .github folder with a /workflows, all the files. It uses YAML syntax. They're event-driven, and they support any language, like I said before. So actions are made up of a few components. So there are workflows, there are events, there are jobs, there are runners, and then you can add other actions within your actions from the marketplace. So when it comes to workflow, a workflow is a configurable automated process that can be triggered manually by an event or as schedule. So the workflow is essentially your action. So typically you'll hear people call it action workflow, workflow file, run your workflow. That is what the action is. It's the totality of whatever you want the automation bot to do for you. So an event is an activity that triggers a workflow. So like I was saying earlier, a pull request, pushing a commit, adding a label, deleting an issue, those are all events that can trigger a workflow run. So the next one will be the runners. And so the runner is the server that runs your workflow when they're triggered. Each runner can run a single job at a time, and GitHub provides Ubuntu, Windows, macOS runners to run your workflows, and they can run and execute in a fresh, newly provisioned virtual machine environment. And GitHub offers larger runners, which are available in larger configurations. And if you need a different operating system or require a specific hardware configuration, you can host your own, like I said earlier. So a job is a set of steps within the workflow. So in one workflow, you can run multiple jobs. So for example, you can have a step that says build the application. Then you can have another step that says test the application, lint the application. Those can all be different jobs. So actions are other workflows that were built by other people for you to use. And so the important thing to remember with actions is that to use them in your workflows, you can use it to help reduce repetitive code that you write. So an action can pull your Git repository from GitHub, set up the correct toolchain for your build environment, or set up the authentication to your cloud provider. So this is an example of what a workflow looks like, and it's a simple hello world workflow. And once you push that to GitHub, this is how it will run. And you can see there on the line that says hello world, it echoed hello world. So let's get into how some of these actions work and how you would configure it for your environments and repositories. So this is the demo repo. If you go to gh.io/actions-demo, you'll pull up this repository. And the great thing about this repository is that it is based on the GitHub Actions Playground repository that we recently created to teach you or to enable you on using and getting started with GitHub Actions on your own. So when you open up this repository, it will bring you into an environment that has a literal walkthrough and an explanation of every single thing that GitHub Action has, and it will help you to create your own actions from the beginning. So when you go to this repository, you can either select the Open in Code Spaces button, or you can select the green code button and click Create Code Spaces on main to just open up a remote dev environment on your computer. So this is the repository. Oh, this is going to be a little annoying, huh? So go back and forth. Okay, let's keep going here. So this is what it's going to look like. So once you open it up, it's going to have different sections for you to complete, a full walkthrough. You have projects to do to get you writing your own actions really quickly. And that's the repo that we're going to be using today. So let's get started. So this is a first example of a CI workflow. So this is going to scan your code for linting errors. And when the code is pushed or a PR is submitted to the main branch, it's going to check the code for whatever rules you implemented in your linter. So this is using an external action from the marketplace to check out your repository. And then it's using another action, the super linter, to actually lint your code base. And so we see the workflow name at the top. We see the event triggers. We see the jobs with steps. And this is what a multi-step workflow would look like. So let's go to the code and see how this works. Great. Do I need to zoom in more? So we're just going to go through this one to see what the CI looks like. I'm just waiting for the code space to build. There we go. And this is what I mean by it's a full walkthrough. Anyway, let's go here. linter.yaml. Okay. Is it too dark? Okay, there we go. Okay. So this is what the YAML file will look like when you write your actions. And so in order to run this action on GitHub, I would need to do a small change. So let's just make a small change here, just so we can see the action in action. Okay, so the goal here is to trigger the linter. There we go. I believe it's triggered by a PR to the main branch. Okay. Now we go here. You can see all the workflows. If we go to lint code base, you can see that the workflow is now running. I can click into it, and I can even click into the job itself to see what's happening. So now it's pulling down the superlinter action to use to lint the code. Then it's going to check out the code. Then it's going to actually lint the code base. And if there's an error, it should tell me exactly what the error is that I need to fix to resolve the issue. And that's the simple CI workflow to keep consistency across your repositories on your team. It's going to take a little bit of time. So we can go back to the code actually, and we can take a look at the CD workflow. So this is a workflow that will deploy your application to the production branches. And one thing to note about this workflow in particular is that it has an environment protection rule that says you can only deploy this application from the production branch right here. So because of this, if I try to deploy the application from ATO or even from the main branch, it's not going to happen because of this protection rule right here. Oh wait, I was here, sorry. So this is what it looks like. It's going to run on a production branch. It's going to use the actions checkout action again to check out the repository. Then it's going to use the configure pages and the upload pages to get those artifacts up. And then it's going to actually deploy the application with the deploy pages action. So let's see where we are with our changes. And so now it's linting the code base. Okay, it looks like it was successfully done. Yep, it successfully ran, and this is what success looks like. Typically, I get an X, so that's pretty good. So this is what it will look like on GitHub when you run your actions. Everything is in one platform, so it's easy for you to just hop, skittle around all over the place. So when it comes to deploying automatically your application, I would first need to create a branch called production. And in order to trigger this, I need to make a small change, nothing major. Let's go here. Here. Okay. A very small change for demo purposes. We're going to add that, then we're going to do a commit. Now let's push this branch. Open up this branch. Create the PR, and this should trigger the deployment to start happening. So if we go here, go here, and this is going to deploy this static site to GitHub pages. And it's done. And that's what it looks like. And so that's kind of how GitHub Actions work. It's an all-in-one platform to get very simple, very repetitive tasks done in your repository. You can obviously make it a lot more complicated, right? Like GitHub Actions can do a lot of complicated stuff, but this is a one-on-one type talk, and we're going to keep it at that level. So let's keep going. Great. We went to this, we went to this, we went to this. So how are developers using GitHub Actions to boost their productivity and to also get their teams going faster? So we have a GitHub Actions marketplace with over 20,000 actions that you can use in your repository. Some of them are verified by GitHub. We're working on verifying more actions so you feel more trust and security when using GitHub Actions. But we do have a lot of actions in the marketplace that you can use, and these actions span across like a lot of different genres. So for example, when you just create a repository, you push it up to GitHub, you don't have any sort of action workflows in your repository. If you go to the Actions tab, GitHub will actually recommend actions for you, actions that you can use or workflows that you can use and implement based on your language in your repository. So right here, I have a simple, I believe it's a Next.js application. And so GitHub is recommending that I use publish the node package, I use Docker image, I use all these things, Webpack, Gulp, Grunt, in my application to just make it a little bit more automated. So that's what it will look like if you don't have any actions on your repo. We also have a lot of actions in the marketplace for release management. So there's an action called GH release, which, does what it says. It will help you to manage your releases automatically. There's a one called release drafter, which is like if you're not ready to publish your releases, you can use that one. And there are plenty more in the marketplace that you can access. There are actions for third-party integrations, and third-party integrations include Asana, what is that one? Jira. So you can integrate actions with those. Here we have a Slack notify action bot. So if something happens in the repo, then Slack will notify, GitHub Action will send a notification to Slack, and Slack will notify us on the team. We use this one a lot to be notified of whenever somebody new opens up an issue on our team repository. That way it doesn't just sit there without anyone looking at it. This is also create Asana task action that you can use to integrate your Asana board with your GitHub profile to get those tickets aligned if that's the tracking tool that you're using. We have more actions for project management. So you can use actions to manage your label. This is the one that closes issue based on a label. So that action I was telling you about is here. And what it does is it will go in, look at your repository, look at how long it's been since you've made a comment on the issue. If you haven't made a comment on the issue, it will add the label stale. And then if you don't remove that label stale within a certain amount of time, it will go in and close that issue. And so that's how that action works. There are actions for deployments. So you can use like a Firebase, automatically do that. You can use an npm publish. There's also an action for automatically publishing a blog post to dev.to. If you're into that, so that's something you can use with your markdown files. There are workflows for security. There are this one I thought was funny. So this one is for the 10x engineers or the workaholics on your team. So it will actually sense whether or not someone is pushing code to your repository very late at night. And it will say, please go to bed. You have worked enough. Thank you for your contribution. So that's called the go to sleep action. So you can actually create your own action for your own purpose. And it doesn't even have to be useful. You know what I mean? It can just be fun and exploratory, something that you can use on your team. So what have we recently done or shipped on GitHub Actions? So earlier this year, we shipped the GitHub Actions importer. So if you're on Azure DevOps, Circle CI, Travis, CI, Jenkins, you can automatically import over your CI/CD pipelines to GitHub Actions using the GitHub Actions importer. It still needs the human eye to verify that all the information is correct, but it does make the very laborious task a little bit more manageable. We also just shipped deployment protection rules. So deployment protection rules essentially block any deployments to your prod environments without like outside approval. So we work with Honeycomb, Sentry, ServiceNow, and Datadog, and I believe we're working on with more partners to get your deployment protection rules in. So how this works is, let's say you push code and it goes through all the workflows, and then there's a blockage right there with the GitHub app that says you have to go into Datadog and approve whatever is happening here before I can continue to the next step. We have some videos on our YouTube channel that teaches you how to do this with the different partners. We also have a VS Code extension. So now you can actually run your workflows within VS Code without leaving VS Code. So you can create, edit, update, run, track all your actions with our VS Code extension. This was a highly requested feature from our people in the community, so we were happy to launch this earlier this year. We also have GitHub Actions on mobile, and with GitHub Actions on mobile, we specifically focused on pull requests, so you can view your pull requests with actions, integration, all that jazz on your mobile phone. Which, work-life balance, right? A little separation. Like, I personally have a work phone. There's, anyway, that's a separate topic. So more things that we have done. We have, launched configuration variables, required workflows to enforce CI/CD practices across repositories, improved navigation pane corrections, more improvements to come, and I believe we recently launched large macOS runners for you that need some powerful actions. Something that's coming down the pipeline, coming next year to you, would be GitHub Actions certification. So this is going to be a full-on course for you to get certified as a GitHub Actions specialist. If you're going to GitHub Universe or register for GitHub Universe, you'll be one of the first ones to take the certifications in person. But if not, you can always sign up for the waitlist, and I created like a little short link if you're interested in that. We'll also have certifications for like a GitHub Foundations, GitHub Security, and GitHub Administration. So there are a few certifications launching early 2024. And even more to come. We're working on a way for you to see metrics for your actions. A way for you to have like seamless management of GitHub hosted runners and self-hosted runners. We're working on a dashboard for deployments across environments. And we're also working on macOS runners for Apple Silicon. So I believe we have time. We can try to send a text message with GitHub Actions. We can use Twilio has a GitHub action called Twilio SMS. And if you implement it the way it's pictured right there, you're able to send a text message. Now, this text message is going to go to my phone. Unless you trust me, how do you know that I received the message? It's only because I have to validate the phone number, and I don't want to show you all my secrets. So if we go to, actually here, I can add it to this one. We're just going to copy pasta. And I'm not sharing my screen. Hold on. Bueno. So we're just going to add it to deploy that YAML. So after deployment, we can send a text to say, hey, good to go. Great. So I have it here. So this is the demo repo here. There are links to resources, slides, all the stuff that you can use. And this is the Twilio thing that we're going to do. Now, I have all my environment variables already saved here. That's the wrong place. It's here. So you'll need all these secrets stored in your environments for the action to access it. Once you store all these, you need to create a Twilio account. And once you create your Twilio account, then you can get a free phone number. Once you have that number, you can store it in here. You'll also get access to an API secret. And you also get access to an account SID, which is separate. And also the API secret is different from the API key. And these are all provided by Twilio. Once you have that, we can go back here. I hate pasting in YAML. Okay, yeah, that's it. That was very surprising. So this is just going to send a message, and it's just going to say hello from GitHub Actions via Twilio. Nothing crazy. Okay, that was there. If we go here, if we go here, if we go here, if we go in here, we will see there's going to be an additional step right here, send SMS with Twilio. That's the one that we just added. So after it does deployment, then it's going to attempt to send a message. You can't see it, but it did work. I didn't know if this photographer wanted to. Is this a message from my phone, sir? At 2:16. When? Validation. But that's GitHub Actions, essentially. I hope you learned some things. So we learned what are actions, how to use it, how developers are using different actions in the marketplace, and even how to send a text message. One thing I wanted to show you was what I was saying earlier with this one. So this is and it's not even a lot of stuff. Like it wasn't very difficult to implement these actions. It was just a matter of having the time to do it on the team. So I had Copilot help me write them, because it was a lot faster. So there's a reminder, there's a notification. We send emails to guests. We send stream reminders. And so because we were sending it to multiple people on multiple days, it was just a lot of talking. And so I just brought everything into the issue so it's more centralized. So here we have people are booking out for next year. And it's so much better because it automatically assigns it to the people. We have their information. We don't have to go scouring for it. They just give us everything we need. And, it makes our life a little bit easier. So when you're working with GitHub Actions, I'm not showing you anything. Apologies. So I was saying here, and if you would like to be an Open Source Friday, feel free to, send me a message on Twitter. I'm happy to send you the issue so you can create an issue and choose a date. So host reminder, notifying guests, send guest guidelines, send stream reminder. So these are very simple tasks, but it took up a lot of time. You'd be surprised at how much time sending all of these to multiple guests at the same time took. And so this is literally what we would do. And now GitHub Actions is going to do all that for me. I did just send out a few links to people. And right now, instead of me going to look for the project repo, a picture of them, their handle, the project name, they just provide me with all the information I need. And then if they didn't book a slot, I have the bot sending them the calendar link like, hey, please remember to book a slot and update the issue with your dates. So it just make your life a little easier. And so when you're using actions, I want you to think outside the box and say, oh, is there an action for that? What can I possibly do to improve this workflow? So you can learn more here. If you have any questions, feel free to see me and ask me. I'll be around for a little bit. I'll be at the GitHub booth specifically. And yeah, thanks for coming.